Hello, my name is Mike Stafford, and I get to be your daughter's AP Comparative Government teacher this year. Welcome back to school. I'm really excited to have your daughters in class as seniors. I get to teach almost all of them as sophomores, and it's really fun to see them again as seniors. So much maturity, so much intelligence, so much creativity. I got to know them really well a couple years ago, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they've grown and then helping them grow more this year. I'm already having huge amounts of fun with them. I'm really enjoying their energy and their enthusiasm. It's going to be a really good year. Um, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about AP Comparative Government. Comparative Government is a college level class. There's a pesky advanced placement exam in May that we will be very prepared for by the time we get there. It's a political science class, and as I tell my students, political science is a completely different animal from history. There's a lot more ambiguity. It's almost an entirely different language as we talk about the political science concepts that we'll be applying. But it's also easily, hands down, the most exciting class that we teach here at Convent, and the most exciting class that I have ever taught in my entire career. It is current. It is fantastic. Every day you open up the paper and you'll see articles in the Cron or the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal or the Guardian or Le Monde or any major newspaper, and you will find articles on the countries that we cover. So it is an incredibly current and an incredibly exciting class because so many of the things that we're learning about are ongoing in the world that we don't really know how things are going to conclude. So it's a really great class to be taking and a great class to be teaching. I really enjoy the opportunities to sit down with my students and talk with them about the politics and government and economics of a variety of countries around the world. The the class covers 6 countries. They are the UK, Iran, Mexico, Nigeria, Russia, and China. And those are 6 actually very good countries. Those are actually the ones that are prescribed by the College Board for AP Comparative Government. They are very good countries to be learning about because they are very representative of a huge variety of development and governmental systems. Great Britain, parliamentary system, very developed. They've got their act together, and yet they still face a lot of problems. They face problems with attitudes towards, should we be providing health care for everybody? Should we be providing so many services for everybody? Kind of ideological issues. They also face terrorism issues. I mean, we saw the great struggle with Northern Ireland for so many decades, and now they're facing issues with Al Qaeda. Of course, we had the London bombings not many years ago. So they're facing a lot of interesting issues in Britain, even though they are so politically stable and so economically developed. In contrast to Great Britain, we then talk about Iran, which is a theocracy, a fundamental country that is uh, in a very different place in terms of its attitudes towards economy, government, human rights, the roles of the people, the roles of the state, and the role of their religion in the midst of all of that. So it's a really interesting contrast to Britain, thinking especially in terms of democratic and authoritarian regimes. Very cool stuff, especially considering how many articles there are these days about Iran, their nuclear program, their new president, etc. Following Iran, we'll talk about Mexico, and then immediately after Mexico, Nigeria. Looking at different states in terms of their economic development. How are they developing economically? What's going well for them? What's not? Mexico, not too long ago, people were talking about the possibility of it being a failed state because of the drug wars that are going on and the inability of the government to be able to protect its people. Fascinating. Mexico, though, still has resorts, still has huge tourism industry. Americans go down there. They feel safe when they go down there. Um, Mexico is actually more developed than a lot of people are willing to give it credit. In contrast to that, and that's also in contrast to Great Britain, which is more developed than even Mexico is. In contrast to those two, you also have Nigeria. Nigeria has the natural resources and the population, which should make Nigeria the shining star of Africa, but it's not. Nigeria has incredible problems that are so enormous. They are almost insurmountable. They've got major ethnic conflict, major religious conflict, major corruption, just problems that are systemic and run extremely deep. How do countries like that get out of those problems? How do they get out of that hole? How do they develop if they are so undeveloped? It's a really good question. Politically, economically, it's a very, very important question, and one that we will tackle as a class. The last two countries, we will talk about the role of communism in the world. First, we'll talk about Russia as a post-communist country. We'll talk about how they went into communism, came out of communism in 1991, and what the influence then has been of communism on the modern Russian state. We'll talk a lot about Vladimir Putin. We'll talk about his role in the modern state. And in fact, even though he is not a communist, he once was. And the influence of communism and the communist way of running the country on modern politicians is going to be pretty dramatic. We'll finally wrap up the whole school year by talking about China. China is the next big superpower. A population of 1.3 billion. They call themselves communist. Are they really? They're run by a communist party, but the Communist Party itself is very much divided over what aspects of communism they ought to be implementing. What they tend to agree on is the level of control they should have over their population. How much controlling things like what people say and think and hear and do, control over the economy somewhat, as much as they can, control over the internet as much as they can, and then their broader global influence. Very, very interesting case study about ideology and how some ideologies are not quite what we think they are. A very, very interesting country to study as well. So those are our 6. Before we launch into the 6, I do lead them on an exercise of I call it political literacy, where we develop a common vocabulary so we can talk about these countries in a meaningful way. What is a parliamentary system versus a presidential system? How they fit in terms of the executive branch, right? So we'll talk about that kind of vocabulary as well. So very interesting class. I love the topic, so very current. And what's also so important about this class is just how applicable it is, because so many of the things we will be talking about in comparative government, specifically about Iran or developing countries or countries where there's a revolution or conflict, can be applicable to many other countries that we're not talking about. So, for example, Syria will be brought up over and over and over again in this class because it is happening and we need to talk about it. But they will have the vocabulary and they will have the context for being able to talk about it in a more meaningful way than ever before. So that's going to be really cool. The idea is in this class, they don't just memorize a bunch of things that happened in 6 countries and they learn about those 6 countries, but that as things continually change in politically and economically around the world, that they'll have the ability to think about those changes, think about those happenings in a meaningful way, in a critical way, in an analytical way. And that is ultimately the most exciting thing. They can pick up a newspaper a year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, read about some country. It doesn't have to be one of the 6. Could be one of the 6, but doesn't have to be. And understand what's going on, or at least have a framework for understanding what is going on in those countries. And that is ultimately my big goal. This is also an incredibly fun class because we live in San Francisco. One of the things that I enjoy doing with my students, if they so desire, is going out to dinner with them from time to time based on the country that we're studying. So in the past, I've gone out to tea when we study Great Britain, gone out with my students to Persian restaurants or Mexican restaurants. Any suggestions on, I just can't find a single Chinese restaurant in San Francisco. I'm just kidding about that. We know about lots of Chinese restaurants in San Francisco. We've been out to Russian restaurants. We actually have a Nigerian caterer who will bring a meal to convent. She was born in Nigeria, and she actually, we've always invited her to join us for the meal, so that our students can talk to her about what it was like living in Nigeria, visiting Nigeria, but also being a female entrepreneur in San Francisco. There are a lot of, she's an amazing woman. It's a really interesting event. So we get to enjoy these meals together and experience the culture of the countries that we're studying together. It's a very convent thing to do, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, my students will be learning and working. I'm sorry, they'll be working with a lot of building a lot of their skills of critical reading, analysis, discussions, presentations. They're going to be doing presentations, individual presentations on every single country that we are studying. They're also working on their writing skills, how to write good essays, get their point across. Very, very important skills. And like I said before, a lot of those skills of being able to apply the concepts to a variety of countries rather than just apply it to the one particular country that they're currently studying. It's a very important skill because things are constantly changing. 100, 200 years ago, almost none of the countries that we are currently studying actually existed, at least not in the way that they exist today. So as things change, people need the skill to be able to change with that and change their thinking about that and be able to understand the changes in context. And that's a very, very, very important skill for my comparative government students. We are going to be using technology very thoroughly in this class. They all have iPads, so I will be asking them to be using their iPads in class for research, for collaboration on assignments, and on classroom activities. We'll be using Moodle as our classroom, as our online classroom. If you'd like to see what we're doing in class, you can go to moodle.sacredsf.org. You can log in as a guest and then just navigate to AP Comparative Government. And you can see some of the upcoming deadlines, some of the things that we're doing currently in class. One of the things that is really critical that you can help me with is the students' concepts will solidify in their minds if you talk to your daughter about what she's learning about in comparative government. It is phenomenal for a lot of reasons. Sit down, breakfast table, dinner table, in the car, on the way into school, way home, whatever. Talk to her about what she's learning about in comparative government. Talk to her about the exciting conversations that we're having on fundamentalism or on ideology or on economy, on any of the countries that we're studying. Ask her about what she's learning. It's so important for a number of reasons. One is it solidifies the concept in her brain, and if she can explain it to you, then she understands it that much better. Second, it gets her excited that you're excited about exciting thing that's happening in class. And I found that the parents of my students tend to really enjoy learning about these countries because while we might be very well informed about current events or not, there are a lot of details about the countries, their ideologies, the experiences of the people, and things like that the parents are also intrigued by. And it's something that I find that my students and their parents really enjoy sharing that interest in comparative government. As always, if you have any questions or problems, if you have any concerns or have any kind of fun anecdotes to share, please by all means contact me. Easily, the best way to contact me is via email. My email address is michael.stafford@sacredsf.org. I check my email religiously, so definitely drop me a line. Let me know how things are going at home. If ever your daughter is feeling overwhelmed by the work that she has to do for me, let me know, and I can help her get back to a more comfortable place where she's feeling more confident and able to do the work that she is supposed to do. So that's it. Welcome back to school. Welcome to comparative government. I look forward to seeing you at back to school night, and I look forward to working with your daughters this year.
Welcome back to school. Welcome back to school. Welcome back to school. Welcome back to school. Welcome back to school.
Welcome back to school.